Hello, everyone. This is um, me again, and I am today going to attempt to read um, the second surah of the Quran, Surah al-Baqarah, at least 20 verses from it, inshallah. And the manner in which I would go about it would be pretty much the same as my previous attempt at reading Surah al-Fatiha. I would um, like to read the words in Arabic first and then proceed in sharing my understanding of what these verses mean in English. My hope is that I would draw predominantly from my readings, my um, studies of the Quran, and I have introduced my father to you before, and draw a lot from his ideas. Um, and nevertheless, try to stay within the confines of the Quran as much as is possible. Um, yeah, so let us begin. Surah Baqarah is the second surah of the Quran, and it begins in the following way. The first verse reads, Alif Lam Mim. What does this verse mean? Um, as far as we know, these are not words we recognize in ordinary Arabic, and commentators have talked about it. They have hypothesized about what these letters could mean, but I am going to offer a slightly different explanation from what has been done hitherto. Um, and like I said, I would use the Quran as support. So for this particular purpose, in order to understand what this verse could potentially mean, I would like to draw your attention to Surah Al Imran, verse 7. Surah Al Imran is the third surah of the Quran. So, verse 7 reads the following way: Alazina anzala alayka al-kitab, the one who has revealed to you the book. Minhu ayatun muhkamatun, from it are verses absolutely clear. Hunna kitab, these are the foundation of the book, the mother of the book. Wa ukharu mutashabihatun, and others, the translator here translates the word mutashabihatun as allegorical. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ, then as for those in their hearts is perversity, فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ, they follow what is allegorical, minhu, from it. ابتغاء فتنة وابتغاء تأويله, seeking discord and seeking its interpretation. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَوِيلَهُ, but not knows its interpretation, إِلَّا Allah, except God. وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, and those firm in knowledge, يَقُولُونَ, they say, آمَنَّا بِهِ, we believe in it. كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا, all of it is from our Lord. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ, but not will take heed, إِلَّا ulul albab, except men of understanding. I read it part by part. There is a possibility that the entirety of the meaning may not have gotten through, so I will read the entire thing in English. The one who has revealed to you the book, from it are verses that are absolutely clear. They are the foundation of the book, and others allegorical. Then as for those in whose hearts is a disease, perversity, they follow what is allegorical from it, seeking discord and seeking its interpretation, and not knows its interpretation except God. And those firm in knowledge, they say, we believe in it. All of it is from our Lord. But not will take heed except men of understanding. So what is being said here is slightly scary. God is saying that he has revealed the book, which I presume to mean a reference to the Quran. So God is talking about the Quran here. And he is saying that in this book, he has introduced two different kinds of verses. Ayatul muhkamatun and ayatul mutashabihatun. The first category includes verses that are absolutely clear, and they also constitute the foundation of the book. I mean, he's using the word ummu here, meaning mother of the book. But there's the second category of verses, ayatul mutashabihatun, and God himself is saying that these are verses whose interpretation is not known to anybody but God. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَوِيلِهِ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. The translator says mutashabihatun means allegorical, but God himself is kind of going even further and saying not simply allegorical. These are verses whose meanings are not accessible to anybody other than God himself. Furthermore, what is scary is that God is saying here that those who pursue the meaning of these verses, those who try to settle the question of what kind of verses they are doing so, God is saying, because they're seeking discord and they're seeking its interpretation. So God is almost saying, don't do it. Because if he is saying that those who pursue its meaning have perversity in their hearts as they seek its interpretation, they do it because they're seeking discord. They're seeking to stir up trouble and to cause division, dissension, however you want to phrase it. He contrasts that with another group of people, and them he calls firm in knowledge. And he tells us that this category of people would be the ones who would say, we believe in it, all of it is from our Lord, but not will take heed except men of understanding. Take heed how? Heed of what? The fact that I think that God himself has placed in the Quran distinct kinds of verses, some of which he has made absolutely clear, and others, yes, definitely the much smaller in number, but nevertheless there are quite a few of them, and they frequently are placed strategically toward the very beginning of the surahs where they occur. I'm not going into details about which surahs they occur in because they do not occur in every surah, but I would like to kind of make the point that there are verses that he's talking about very clearly as ayatul mutashabihatun, and he is telling us that these are verses whose meaning is not accessible to anyone but himself. So going back to Surah Al-Baqarah, my wager is that Alif Lam Mim falls into the category of ayatul mutashabihatun, not ayatul muhkamatun, meaning its meaning is not known to anyone except God. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. That is the second verse of the surah. Okay? That, which is the meaning of the word ذَلِكَ, is a demonstrative pronoun, and as such it has a level of immediacy, a level of hearkening to something that is almost physically present, that two interlocutors may be pointing to as they share ideas with each other. So God here is using the word that, pointing to something which is almost immediately present. That's my feeling here. And I'm guided by my father's ideas here. So his contention is that this word refers directly to Surah Al-Fatiha. If you remember that Surah Al-Fatiha has kind of a two-part structure, the first part of which describes God. I spoke about this in my previous reading. And the second part of it, which I think begins with Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, where God is giving us the exact words with which to ask for guidance from Him. And guidance to a path that is firm, a path that is stable, and not the path of Satan, not the path of those who are lost, but the path of those on whom God has bestowed His favors. God is pointing to that specific path with the word dalika here. So He's saying that the guidance that we have asked for, the Sirat al-Mustaqim, whose outline we have begged for, which He has taught us to beg for in Surah Al-Fatiha, that is the book. And He proceeds to say, no doubt in it. There's no doubt in the fact that the map to the Sirat al-Mustaqim, the directions to Sirat al-Mustaqim, the path of those whom God has blessed, the path not of Satan, the path of not those who are lost. That is the path that we have asked for, right? Is that path, that guidance, is to be received from and via this book. There's no doubt about this fact. That's one way of reading it. There is another way of reading La Rayba Fi, no doubt in it. It could be that he's saying about this book, there is no doubt. That it's a book that is certain, that is, it's basically the outline to Sirat al-Mustaqim. So a path that is straight, a path that is reliable, completely reliable. And there's no chance that we will be lost in it. It's a path that is certain, and there's no doubt in it. We will not be beset by doubts and fears if we follow this path. And He's saying very clearly that it's the book. I hope that was not too convoluted. Because why do I say this? Because just look at the next words. Hudan lil muttaqin. So here we are. We are encountering the word guidance right here in the second verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, the first comprehensible verse in this surah. We are encountering the word hudan again. We just asked for guidance from God in Surah Al-Fatiha. We said Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. So that is the guidance that he's talking about, hudan, right here. Um, what kind of hudan? About which there's no doubt. However, there is a proviso here. It's not for everybody. Hudan lil muttaqin. It is for those who are deemed muttaqin. Um, Translators have translated this word variously. Here they offer the translation God conscious. Sure, if you are of the muttaqin, you're very likely to be, it's almost certain that you will be conscious of God. But I feel like that is not doing justice to the incredible breadth and scope of this word. And I don't need to theorize about this myself because I feel like the subsequent verses, in the same manner as we have noticed so far, actually help us understand what God means by the muttaqin. Alladhina yu'minuna bil ghaib. This is the beginning of the third verse. And God goes on to say, وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. I would like to alert you to the fact that I would be reading several of the key words here very differently from what standard translators have offered. So let's start. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. The translation here says, those who believe in the unseen. So be is being translated as in. Fairly common. I think the Quran uses the word be as meaning in many times in the Quran. But there is another meaning of this word, which is with. And I think that it yields quite interesting results if we accept the word be as meaning with here. So God, as I said, is introducing us to who the muttaqin are. The first requirement, it seems, is that we have to believe with the unseen. If we accept be as meaning with here. And you will find, if you scour the Quran, you will find many instances where translators do accept that to be the meaning. So if we say believe in the unseen, then what the verse means is that we are required to believe in what cannot be seen, what is not accessible to our vision. If we alternatively translate it as with the unseen, things get very interesting, because I think that what that means is that we are required to bring faith with that part of ourselves that is not visible. It's a very interesting philosophical quandary, obviously. Which part is that? But I think we can all agree that we do actually have a part that we cannot see. My body, my hair, my brain, my eyes, all of this point to a mind that is not very easily locatable. You can't say that my exists in the brain. You can't say that my exists in any of the recognizable body parts. But yet its presence is something we all feel, to the point that we all actually have this shared language where we say my. And yet we don't really mean our body. So that part of ourselves that is not visible, that is what is being talked about here. So The muttaqeen are people, therefore, who believe with that part of themselves that is not visible. وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. Translator says, establish prayer. Salat in Arabic is setting up communications, making contact, or the efforts to make contact or to communicate. I will use that meaning. So, those who stand by their efforts to make contact, not merely try to make contact, not merely try to communicate, but they constantly make efforts to make contact. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. The last part of this verse. And from what we have provided them, they spend. That's what the translator is saying. I'll read that again. And out of what we have provided them, they spend. I'm offering a variation. And from what we have given them, they spend. If you read analysis of this verse, often the meaning devolves into talking about provisions. Now, while it is true that provisions is a word that can be seen to mean a wide variety of things, including food, nourishment, what keeps us alive, I feel like that's a very limited way of thinking about the word rizq. I think what God means here is that whatever we give them when they make contact, that's rizq. When they try to make contact, that's rizq. From there, they spend. Okay, next verse. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. Translator says, and those who believe in what was sent down to you and what was sent down before you, and in the hereafter they believe. If we stick to the meaning of be as being with, I think the verse changes dramatically, and rather than mean that the muttaqeen are people who believe in what is sent down to Muhammad and what was sent down before him, I think God is telling us here that we are required to chart our faith with what he has sent down to Muhammad and what was sent down before. The significance of the kitab, the book, words of God that he sent via his prophets directly, not the hadith, not commentary, but what each messenger has brought down, had revealed to him or her throughout time. That is what is being talked about here. Not the messenger's understanding of it, but the part that God himself sent down. I will give you an example to illustrate what I'm trying to say. The Quran is classified as the direct words of God. In contrast, the Hadith is commentary and sometimes additional points that the Prophet Muhammad is known to have or believed to have said. I am not talking about the latter. I am talking about only the words that we are certain, we hope we are certain, God has sent us. God is saying that we believe with what was sent down to Muhammad and what was sent down before. two interesting things open up here. One is that belief is no longer up in the air. Belief is no longer something that we as individuals chart out according to our desires, our preferences, etc., etc. Belief becomes locked into the confines of God's book. So the first one is what is sent down to you, which is clearly a reference to the book that we're reading right now, but also what was sent to those before you. And we, especially in the Judeo-Christian Muslim tradition, trace several books to several different prophets whom we accept as being part of the tradition, going all the way back to Moses, obviously. I'm talking about the Torah that we accept to have been the book that was sent down to Moses, and the Bible, or the Injil, according to the Quran, that was sent down to Jesus. Obviously, the Quran tells us, as obviously because the Quran tells us very clearly, God has sent down his words as guidance all the way back to the first human that he has sent to this world, Adam. There has never been, according to the Quran, a time when God's words were not present, did not coexist with the existence of human beings. So the idea that we hail from apes or an ancestor that is common to both humans and apes is completely rejected by the Quran as being a complete absurdity. God made humans as they are, whole and complete. And you will find out from this surah very soon, inshallah, that he taught Adam the names of everything. And so Adam was no ignoramus, not having any idea how to conduct himself as a thinking, feeling, civilized human. That is not the image that God gives us. So the ideas of the old Stone Age and the new Stone Age and the gradual transformation of humans from animals to their present day iteration is pretty much proved to be a myth by the Quran. It's almost what you can call an alternative reality to what we live. And why not, right? Because its first requirement is that we believe with the unseen part of ourselves, with the invisible part of ourselves. And even if we accept what translators say here, in the unseen, that too is a requirement that is completely at odds with what human beings are prone to do, which is rely excessively on their senses, on their perceptions, etc. Okay. Moving on, next verse. Ulaika ala hudan min rabbihim wa ulaika humul muflihun. Those are on guidance from their Lord, and those, they will be the successful ones. So if we have asked God for guidance, if God has taught us that we need to ask for guidance, and he has given us the words with which to say that we seek guidance, ihdina sirat wal mustaqim, he is also providing us with a very clear sense of what that guidance would be. It is, according to him, the book that has been revealed to Muhammad, but also books that came before. It is requiring us to believe with that part of ourselves that is invisible. It is requiring us to constantly strive to make contact, presumably with him. And it is requiring us to give of the rizq he gives us when we do try to make contact with him. If we do this, God is telling us we will be the the successful ones, because we will then be on guidance. We will be the guided ones. Okay, a second category of people is being introduced in verse 6. Inna ladina kafaru sawa'un alayhim a andartahum am lam tundirhum la yu'minun. Those who, the translator here says, disbelieve. Kufr, kafaru is derived from the word kufr, is a farming concept where we, if you look up any dictionary, you will find that kufr means to hide, literally alluding to the act of hiding under the soil that a farmer is required to do to a seed, right? What a farmer would often do is hide seeds under the ground, in the soil, so that it can have the perfect conditions for allowing it to have a chance to grow into an actual plant. So to say disbelief is very obfuscating and not very clear. I would say instead, those who hide, those who reject. That is often, rejection is often a word, or often a chosen meaning by many translators for the word kufr. So I would take that one. Those who reject what? What he has just said. Sawa'un alayhim a andartahum am lam tundirhum la yu'minun. Those who reject, it is the same to them whether you warn them or you do not warn them, they will not believe. Right after God told us that the muttaqin are people who would spend from what we have given them, meaning God has given us. We will try to use the invisible part of ourselves to make contact, and when we try to make contact, whatever God gives us, we will try to spend from that. And yet, he is giving us a conundrum here. He's saying that those who reject this message, they are going to not believe. Moreover, it's going to be the same whether we warn them. So it's not from want of warning, it's not from want of our trying, that they will not believe. They will not believe because they have rejected the message. The subsequent verse kind of, I think, sheds some light into what he means by that. Khatamallahu ala kulubihim. God has set a seal on their hearts. Wa ala sam'ihim wa ala abswarihim yashawatan. And on their hearing and on their vision is a veil. Walahum adabun azim. And for them is a painful punishment. So perhaps this is the explanation for why people who kafaru will not believe whether we warn them or do not warn them. It is because God has set a seal on their hearts, and on their hearing and on their vision there is a veil. Both their senses of hearing and vision are therefore obstructed, have a veil. For them is a painful or great punishment. So rejecting God's message, God's guidance, is not an innocent act. It is not a neutral act. This is one of the scariest messages of the Quran, that if we turn away, if we deny, if we reject, if we hide our knowledge of what has been revealed to us, what has been purveyed to us, what has been conveyed to us, we don't just get to go scot-free. what's going to happen is that we are going to be punished very severely. There's a great punishment for us. And on top of this punishment that is awaiting us in this world, we will have our vision and our hearing obstructed. There will be a veil over it. And our hearts will be sealed. That seems a terrible fate. A third category of people. We encountered the muttaqin. We encountered the people who are rejecting the idea that in the book or in the books of God lies guidance to the path that is Sirat al-Mustaqim. We have encountered the muttaqin. We have encountered those who reject what has been accepted by the muttaqin, what is accepted by the muttaqin. And this third category of people are people who say, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ, and of people, or and of humans, or some who say, آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, we believe in God and the last day. وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, but they do not believe. God is describing them and then telling us that they say it, but they do not believe. Why do they do this? We were provided an explanation for why people do kufr, because God has set a seal on their hearts and their hearing and their vision are obstructed. So why do this third category of people say they believe when they do not believe? They seek to deceive God. They say this with the intention of tricking God and those who believe. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. They seek to deceive God and those who believe. Do they succeed? This is what God has to say. وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. But not they deceive, and not they deceive, except أنفسهم, themselves. وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ, but they do not realize it. So this third category of people includes people who say they believe in God and the last day, but God tells us that in spite of what they say, they do not believe, and the reason they do it without realizing that they're doing it, وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ, they do not realize it themselves, is that they seek to deceive or trick God and those who believe. So here is, I think, a moment to pause, because one of the things that I would like to point out is that the Quran, this is like almost the beginning of the Quran. Yes, this is the second surah, but Surah Fatiha was pretty short, and when we encounter Surah Baqarah, this is the second surah, what we are encountering is the internal divide that human beings, many human beings, have within themselves. They say things and they do things without knowing that they're allowed to do this because God is controlling them. God has set a seal over their hearts. Likewise, they seek to deceive God and those who believe, and so they go ahead and say that they believe, but they do not believe. Nor do they succeed in tricking anyone except themselves. The following verse adds to this picture. Fi qulubihim maradun. In their hearts is a disease. Fazadahumullahu maradun. Maradun. And God increases them in disease. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. And for them is a punishment painful because of what they used to concoct, lie about. So people who, it may be you, it may be me, and this is what the Quran wants us to do, to self-examine and compare and contrast our ideas of ourselves with the picture that's given to us, because it gives us these pictures that are extremely insightful, extremely piercing, and extremely accurate. And if we are willing to be honest, I think we will be able to recognize ourselves being painted here. So people who say they believe in God on the last day can be people who are merely saying it, but they don't really believe. They do it because they want to trick God and those who believe, but they trick nobody else but themselves. In our efforts to deceive, we deceive none other than ourselves. And the worst part is we do not even realize it. Why? Because we have let our hearts become diseased. And when we do that, think of the incredible sense of agency that God is describing to us here. He's saying that we are responsible for this, right? In their hearts is a disease. Our hearts have been allowed by us to become diseased. Then God increases that disease. And so that in itself is obviously a very clear punishment. But God adds that we have a painful punishment awaiting us because we used to lie. Next verse. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. When it is said to these people who lie, do not spread corruption, do not spread such lies, do not live so that your life is a living lie and thereby spread corruption in the earth, they will claim that they are reformers. Again, God inserts himself here and tells us, beware, Allah. Innahum humul mufsidun. They're not reformers. They're the ones who are spreading corruption. Walakin la yashurun. But they do not realize it. Again, the kind of internal divide that is extremely scary is being talked about here. People doing things for what they think is one reason, for what they think they have no motives for, but not being aware, not at kind of at a distance from their own selves, because they speak and do things that they are not completely clear about, because God says that he makes them do a lot of the things that they do. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا. And when it is said to them, believe, كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسِ, as have believed people before you, قَالُوا أَنُؤْمِنُ كَمَا أَنفُسَهُمْ. Shall we believe as fools believe? So God would not just increase the disease in our hearts for no reason. He would do it because of our own actions. And one of these actions is to knowingly persist in our folly, to knowingly keep doing things because we think of ourselves as knowing what is best for us, and considering people who beg for God's guidance, who rely on people's guidance, as fools. Because look at what these people do. When it is said to them, believe in how others amongst you, other humans amongst you, have believed, they would retort with, should we believe as fools believe? God is saying, Allah innahum humus sufaha'u walakin la ya'lamun. Beware, or certainly, they themselves are the fools, but they do not know. These are people who do not realize why they do the things that they do, and they do not know that even though it may seem that people who believe are fools, they're not. They don't know that these believers are not fools. Further description of their behavior. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, and when they meet those who believe, قَالُوا آمَنَّا, they say we believe. Remember, they lie. وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَىٰ شَيَاطِينِهِمْ قَالُوا إِنَّ مَعَكُمْ إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ. And when they are alone with their evil ones, shayateen, this is the first time you're encountering the word shayateen here, and it's in the plural. These people say, we are with you. We were only mocking. So I just want to read this one more time. When they meet those who believe, they say, we believe. But when they are alone with their evil ones, they say, we are with you. And what we said to these others that we believe was merely us mocking them. Here's what God has to say. Next verse. Allahu yastahzi'u bihim wa yamudduhum fi tughyanihim ya'mahun. God mocks with them, or at them. Be is here translatable as at. وَيَمُدُّهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ, and prolongs them in their transgression. They wander blindly. يَعْمَهُونَ. God mocks at them and prolongs them in their transgression so that they wander blindly. Just imagine the disconnect, right? We think that we have agency, we are the doers, we are mocking this group or that, we are having fun, sort of saying we side with the believers, and then when we go and meet people that God labels as shayateen, we say, oh no, we were just joking, or we were just mocking these believers, we were actually with you. But God is saying that He mocks at them and He prolongs them in their transgression. He allows their state of transgressiveness, their state of crossing God's boundaries. He prolongs them in that, and they wander blindly. Who are these people? Ulaika alladhina ashtara'u dwalalata bil huda. These are the ones who have bought being astray. Remember waladwalin from Surah Al-Fatiha? Being lost. So these are the people who have bought being lost. Bil huda, with guidance. فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ, but not profited their commerce. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ, and not are they guided. God proceeds to draw a very clear picture so that we receive the full brunt of how lost and how far away from the right path we will be if this is the state we find ourselves in, of being in kufr, or worse, of being people who say they believe, but they take it very lightly as a joke, as mockery, and they do not really believe. مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا. Their example is like the example of the one who kindles a fire. So their situation is analogous to someone who has built a fire. So there is some success, there is some light, and there's warmth, and they have succeeded in their efforts to make a fire. فَلَمَّا أَضْوَأَتْ مَا حَوْلَهُ. Then when it lights his surroundings, ذَهَبَ اللَّهُ بِنُورِهِمْ. God took away their light. وَتَرَكَهُمْ فِي ظُلُمَاتٍ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. And left them in darkness so that they do not see. This takes my breath away because it's extremely frightening, I think. Partly because of the illusion of agency that God is talking about here, and the kind of, remember, he just told us that he lets us wander blindly, and he prolongs us in our transgression when we do what he has asked us not to do. So the example of these people is like people who have some success. They actually do manage to light a fire, and they do manage to have their surroundings lit up, right? When we have made efforts to light a fire, think of it metaphorically, think of it literally, there will be a sense of success. There will be a sense of having attained some kind of a goal. It is precisely then that God takes the light away, so that we're sunk in darkness. Right after we have had a sense of having done something right, having achieved a goal of here lighting a fire, God takes it away. And leaves them in the darkness so that they do not see. ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون. They do not see. Right after having made to feel that we can see, we do see, by dint of our own efforts, we are made to feel that we cannot see. Summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarjun. Deaf, mute, blind. We have no hearing. We cannot speak. We are robbed of our capacity to speak. And we are blind. So they will not return. Fahum la yarjun. They will not return. Another example. أو كصيب من السماء, or like a thunderstorm from the sky. فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق. In it are darkness and thunder and lightning. Think about thunderclouds and you would know what God means here, right? You have all these layers, and you have in it darkness and light and thunder. يَجْعَلُونَهُمْ أَصْوَابِعَهُمْ فِي آذَانِهِمْ. They put their fingers in their ears. مِنَ الصَّوَاعِقِ. From the thunderclaps, the loud noise that thunderclaps make. حَذَرَ الْمَوْتِ. Obviously, it's an instinctual response arising from our fear of death when we do that, right? If you have ever encountered a thunderstorm, not from the relative security of an urban setting, but actually from being exposed to the elements and having to kind of deal with the enormity of a thunderstorm. Um, I think this image would become clearer. Look up the number of people who die from being exposed to thunderstorms, and you will know what he's talking about here. Um, it's a very instinctual response. You try to shut out the noise of the thunderclaps. Um, the state of being almost confronted by death, the fear of death, the instinctual withdrawal from the enormity of what we are being exposed to in the form of the thunderstorm, and trying to kind of protect ourselves by covering up our ears because we're afraid of death. The state of being encompassed by this experience, that is what God is trying to invoke here. God is invoking here. I'm sorry. I don't want to say God is trying to. May God forgive me. Wallahu muhitun bil kafirin. And God encompasses the kafirin. Short and sweet. He has invoked with a single verse the pretty broad canvas. We are being asked to imagine a moment when we are trying to instinctually protect ourselves from the prospect of dying with a clearly puny response, like just trying to block our ears so that we don't have to confront the sound of impending death. God encompasses us in that way. We are completely surrounded by Him, completely at His mercy, completely unable to do anything. Any efforts that we make would be as ineffectual as trying to block our ears at the prospect of dying from a thunderstorm. Yakadul barku yakhtafu. Almost the lightning snatches away. What does it snatch away? Abswarahum, their sight. Kullama adwa'a lahum ma shaw fihi. Whenever it flashes for them, they walk in it. So we are completely at God's mercy. We are completely surrounded. Whenever there's a little bit of light that we can make out, we try to move forward. Obviously, almost blindly making our way through it. And then, وَإِذَا أَظْلَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ, when it darkens on them, because that's how it works, right? If you think of lightning, it alternates between lighting up the space that it's in, and then immediately after covering it up with darkness, right? The lightning flashes, there's some light, but immediately after the flashing is over, it's dark. We're in utter darkness. And darker, it feels darker than before because of the presence of light in the moment immediately before. وَإِذَا أَظْلَمَ, and when it darkens, عَلَيْهِمْ قَامُوا, they stand still. Utterly lost, utterly unable to make a motion forward, and in any kind of confidence, that is. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ, if God had willed, لَا ذَهَبَ, He would certainly have taken away بِسَمْعِهِمْ, their hearing, وَأَبْصَارِهِمْ, and their sight. So, in that powerful image of a blundering human through a thunderstorm, dependent entirely on the intermittent flashes of lightning that he or she encounters, um, and then immediately afterwards kind of pausing and being unable to move forward, you have again reinforced the idea of God's complete control over ourselves. Especially um, scary because we think that we are these mockers who um, can kind of make fun of God and believers. And we are in control, we have agency, we can trick people, we can trick even God. In this supreme state of confidence, too, we are utterly at the mercy of God. And وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ, if God had willed, لَذَهَبَ بِسَمْعِهِمْ, he certainly would have taken away their hearing. وَأَبْصَارِهِمْ, and their height. And their sight. إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Indeed, God is over everything, able to exert his power. In case we didn't know that. Thank you for listening. That will be all. Inshallah, in my next reading, we will move beyond verse 21, 20, and so on. I hope your Ramadan is being fruitful and you are able to make efforts to learn about what God has intended for you as guidance. That is the Quran. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful day.